Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining me today for this webinar on cultivating your leadership skills. We're going to be talking about formal and informal leadership roles and how both can be very helpful to you in terms of preparing yourself for future positions, opportunities, all that kind of thing. And hopefully it'll be more of a, I really want it to be more of a conversation than a just a one-way chatter. However, I have been having a little bit of difficulties. The internet is showing as unstable, so we will hope that that will still it will actually hang in there and work so that I can hopefully be on screen as much as possible, but at least get through the presentation, even if I have to be off screen. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm excited to talk about this topic because I think it's one that so often clients of mine, RPCV clients, find, they're applying for jobs and they feel like they don't have leadership skills, or they feel like they don't have supervisory skills and things like that. Return volunteers have a lot of leadership skills in your Peace Corps service and beyond. But sometimes people just don't think that can be a formal, like for a job qualification, if it wasn't something that was in an actual job where they were like titled as supervisor or leader or things like that. So we'll talk about that today. And I hope it'll be a good, rich dialogue. I always like that better than just presenting. So let's go ahead and start. So before we really define leadership, and what I want people to do is write your thoughts. What do you think of when you think of leadership? What is leadership in your mind? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just asking you to put whatever you think, how you would define it in the chat box is great. And while you're doing that, I have this quote. I love this quote. The only definition of a leader is someone who has followers, right? So it takes more than just you to be a leader. It's other people involved and other people looking at you as a leader or somebody who, is to be respected and maybe, seek your advice, things like that. So what do we have for definitions of leadership here in the chat box? Let's see someone who exercises common sense and is able to persuade others to work with them. Excellent, Ellen. That's a great definition, and you'll see a lot of that repeated in my slides, right? So it's, because you exercise, right, common sense and a lot of other types of traits, people trust you and people look to you and people follow you. So they follow your lead. They follow what, steps or recommendations you might, think might work best because they respect you. And that's so important. That's great. Erica, someone willing to not just agree, but speak up and offer a different direction. That's a really good one as well. And that is very important, right? So somebody who's willing to speak up and yet remain positive, not, looking at the other and saying, well, that doesn't make sense. That one's a dumb idea. We should do this. Obviously, it's someone who can very professionally state their opinion, but, wow, these are really some great ideas and such. And, I had another idea that might be worth considering as well. And it revolves around and, bringing things up in a way where it's not, well, that's not the way to go. This is the way to go. Right. And there are times that leadership, especially formal leaders, have to at some point make the decision, right? But they can certainly seek to get that input and hear all sides and listen, right? And respect and all of those things before they maybe have to make that difficult decision. In the end, if there's absolute non-agreement or they can't come to the resolution, it may fall on the leader or the leader's supervisor to make the decision, based on what was shared. So great. Someone who can unite, absolutely. And I call that more like coalition building, right? So you're taking a lot of different ideas and able to really encompass them and put them together into what makes most sense, into a logical format of what would be a good solution, right? Because so often we're working in teams on problems or issues, right? Or topics, whether it's strategic planning or whether it's how to address impacts of COVID on whatever the business, things like that. So it's working through and working together. So it's that whole bringing together as well. Great. Let's see if I missed any other of the comments here. Just wanted to look in the chat box, make sure I think I got most of them of leaders. Motivator to reach a goal, Ginny, yes, absolutely. And then was there any other? Nope, I think we're good. Great. So those are some great definitions of leadership. And what we're going to do is go on and talk. I have a couple different definitions that I'm sharing here. The first one from the Oxford Dictionary, right? So your very traditional definition of leadership. So the action of leading a group, right? The act of leading them. So it's different styles of leadership. There are different styles. It's not a one fit all, right? One style fits all, right? And quite honestly, people are comfortable sometimes with certain types of leadership. And we're going to be talking about, good leadership and some not so good leadership, things that you'd want to avoid. So another definition here, the art of motivating a group of people toward achieving a common goal, right? That's definitely another goal or objective, right? And so leadership can
I think you're stuck, Jodi. I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen on my side.
Frozen on my side as well.
now.
Me too.
You can't?
You're coming back in now.
Great. I'm so sorry about this. So you can hear me now. Great. Did it leave off? Did it cut out when I was just starting the definition with Oxford definition?
Yeah, right about there.
Okay. So as Oxford defines it, as is listed as number 1 there, right? The action of leading a group of people, or an organization, right? And so there's very many different styles of leadership, and they're not all great, right? So we're going to be talking about good leadership and not so good leadership and characteristics, as well as how you can improve and how you can show up as more of an informal leader, right? So, but it's also the art of motivating, what I said, toward achieving, motivating a group of people toward achieving the common objective, right? And then finally, just to put out there that definitely leadership also can be used as a group of their top executives. For example, in Peace Corps, the agency at headquarters, you have senior leadership. So you have a team of leadership, which is basically the director and, some of the very high level positions, some of the directors of some of the different departments. And that's the leadership team they'll talk about. But for today, we're really talking about this one that I've circled, right? Really the first one and the second, right? But the one that I've circled, the art of motivating a group of people toward achieving a common objective, is really what I'm going to focus on when I'm talking about formal leadership and informal leadership and things you can do to strengthen your leadership, because it is something that can be so helpful to you in moving up and getting future jobs. If you already have, these leadership skills and the informal ones, it can definitely help propel you in the direction of either more formalized leadership roles, if that's what you're looking for, realizing that not everyone is, right? And that's okay too. So we're going to talk more about this second one. So the components of leadership, as are indicated here, right? And there's different ways to say this. This is just one I liked the graphic of, but you talk about leadership being, really motivating, right? But having that vision, right? Of what is the vision of the organization or of this particular team that we're bringing XYZ, issue, that kind of thing, right? As well as, the goal and planning the goal, right? And having that common goal in mind, right? You're working on a specific goal. You can't take on everything at once. You really need to, be able to, cut it down and put it down into, break it down into smaller levels of things to take on, right? You usually have that proven track record of success, and you're very aimed at being successful. That's your real goal as a team, not as an individual, right? You're really showing you're coming as part of this team. Leadership is not about you. It's about your team and you, and really helping empower them and helping lead them toward whatever goal it is, right? So it could be in, like I said, strategy. What's your strategy for getting there? It could be looking at the strategy of an organization, but you need to be strategic as a leader, as well as innovative. You got to think outside the box and be willing to listen to people who think outside the box, willing to listen to an idea that's very different than maybe one that's been put up already. To hear them out, because that creativity can really generate a lot of really unique types of solutions that can be really, really amazing as well. Obviously, keeping the idea central, what's the idea, mission, purpose of the organization as we plan, and planning is key, right? Plan ahead and move toward it, and work toward the direction of, where you need to get. So all of those things are really good components there of leadership. So let's go on here. So characteristics of a good leader, right? So because we're going to, whether it's a formal or informal one, right? And so things like, inspiring others to act. So being someone who's inspirational, right? Who leads by example, they trust you, all of those kinds of things, while simultaneously directing, or I don't even know if I like the word directing, the way it's overseeing, it's guiding, but a lot of times it's less of this, we need to move here. You try to have it be a team effort, and them taking some ownership and roles in helping to steer it along. And that empowers people and makes them feel more a part of the team. So the person that's a good leader also needs to be personable, right? Personable enough for people to, like them, right? To think that they're should be respected, that they're kind, that they're right, and that way they'll follow what you're, if you need to steer them in a certain direction, they won't necessarily second guess that or question that kind of thing. So definitely that's important as well. And then thirdly here, really, right, but particularly with leaders, and when you're either in leadership roles or you're that informal type of leader, knowing the best way to use the limited resources that you have, as through the organization, or tapping into other ones, right? That's being creative and all of that too. So but having strong critical thinking skills are really going to serve you well. So great. Last slide on this, really, I like this graphic that really shows more of kind of qualities of good leaders, right? So in addition to what I've already said, right, being supportive and things like that, encouragement, really encouraging them to give their best in a way that's, not you're not doing enough, you need to be this, but rather, being supportive and, hey, we're making really great progress. Thanks for that part that you did on that. And I'll look forward to seeing the other. Being more of that, good leader. Now it's showing I'm unstable. Am I able to be heard? I hope.
Yeah, I've been getting you, Jodi.
Okay, thank you. I just keep getting this like internet unstable. So if it does happen that it freezes, just feel free to bust in and say, Jodi, you're frozen up. Okay, I want to make sure that I don't, keep talking if I'm frozen. So great. Recognition is really talking about the recognition that you give to others, not the recognition that you get yourself. Now, if you are a good leader and you're able to do these things, chances are, you will get recognition from your senior staff, right? People who, are seeing the work that, the team is doing, and that you're, helping really facilitate and direct. And that's a great thing, right? But this is talking more about the qualities of giving recognition to the parties, right? Stimulating work. Now, this can be important, especially as like dynamics, team dynamics. I mean, how many of you have worked in a team where not a great team, where you haven't liked the team, right? Where it's been a difficult experience, right? Where you have gotten frustrated, or you feel like you're at an impasse, nobody's agreeing and we can't move forward. And maybe there wasn't a leader that had these characteristics and qualities to move you forward, right? But that's always something, it goes back to the quality really that Erica said, in the chat box about, someone, a leader being someone who can unite, especially lots of different ideas, right? So it's stimulating work and moving forward even, through, challenges. Focusing on the team interests and needs, right? What does the team need to be successful? What are the roles they need you to play? And what are the roles they'd prefer to really take on and help, and feel, empowered by taking on themselves, right? Inspiration and guidance, but not like you have to do this or telling them what they have to do, right? Inspiring them to want to do good and to want to come up with the best solution or, move in whatever direction is going to, meet the needs and such. So obviously a good leader has integrity, right? I mean, that's key, because if you're not someone with integrity, how can people respect you and what you say and what you do? If you're not that, then they can't trust you. They can't, feel, you're the, a good influence and that you're, worthy of being followed, right? So that's another one. And then clear goals, someone who keeps those goals clear, right? I mean, making sure that, people know what the goals are, because sometimes that they can lose that. It can get, especially an ongoing one, right? That seems like it never ends. Looking at some of those goals and some of those milestones, right? What kinds of milestones can you celebrate with them? Can you, so that it makes it, more fun as well, right? And they feel, recognized. So yeah, I mean, it might be something, when we're back together in teams, maybe it's, let's, go out, have a lunch in the park or some kind of, just something that's fun, whatever. So being a good example, of course, of all of this, as we said, and then, your vision, having a vision of, what needs to be done, clearly communicating what need to do, what the team needs to do, because then you waste a lot of time and they waste a lot of time and then get frustrated. And then expecting the best. I think, a good leader does expect quality work because she or he trusts their people, right? And knows that they're capable of doing that. And so, really expecting, good quality work. And if they've treated them in this way, chances are you're going to get that. So any questions so far? If you have any, put them in the chat box. I see Erica says, what about in complement to stimulating work, also a leader knowing when to rest? Yes, when to press, when to relax. That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Erica. I think that's a really good one, even if it's not on here. There's so many different models and such anyway, but I think what you're saying, knowing when to really, to press on when it's that heat of the moment, you've got to get something done, whatever, but then knowing when to take a break and give people some time, off, if you will, a little bit less, of the gotta run, right? And relax. And that's important too, because it is important for your own, emotional health and well-being as much as anything else, which I think companies and organizations and people in general are becoming more and more. I think they understand that is very important. And so to do those things, that's great. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate that. Let's see, formal versus informal leaders. What's the difference? And this is what I want to really ask you more. And we've talked a little bit already, but how would you see an informal leader, or what are some examples of informal leaders versus formal leaders? And you could certainly unmute yourself, or you can just put the answer in the chat box. Your choice. Absolutely. Formal and informal leaders. There's quite a difference. Let's see here. Anything coming in? Feel free again to just unmute yourself and say it. Ginny has something she put down. Informal establishes relationships to enhance both parties. Formal may just be positional. Oh, that's great. And hopefully, Ginny, it's not just positional, but you're right. A formal leader is somebody who is in a formal leadership position. So it could be the, director of the marketing department that you are reporting to. It could be, it's a coach, or, they're in a formal leadership position. That's their job and they're entrusted with that and all of that, right? So, but exactly, but hopefully in a leadership position, like we were talking about a little bit already, you have people who really work on their own leadership skills and are a good leader versus a bad leader, right? And I think that's very important as well. So great. Formal, someone with the title, Erica says, yes. And I think that's, along the lines of what I was, mentioning there, a title. So a leadership title, right? It's a recognized, like, who is the leader of this group? There's one, generally person that's a, formal leader, but then you have the informal, and that's exactly someone with the traits. And oftentimes your informal leaders are much more important than your informal, than your formal leaders, because they have the actual, they have the power to, because of the respect they've gained, being an informal leader, somebody that everyone looks to move forward with, looks to for support, guidance, all of that. Many times your informal leaders are much more effective than your formal leaders in the truth of the matter. So yeah, absolutely. That's great. Those are great things. Let's keep going here. And this is where we're at, the Shirtless Dancing Guy on leadership. And I made, was it Erica, a co-host? I forget. And with the hopes that she might be able to play this, because I honestly don't think mine will, as much as it is already freezing up with the unstable internet connection showing. So I will let you can share your screen if you are. Erica, are you there? Can you take yourself off mute if you are the one who offered, or who was it that offered? And were you the one who had offered to maybe try to show it?
I did. Hopefully I have the right one.
Great.
I'm going to
So do you know how to, what's that?
I was waiting for you to stop sharing your screen. I will try.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to, yeah. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
That's great.
No worries.
Great. Thank you. So yes, if you can share yours and share that would be great. Hopefully it will work. And we're looking for, what do you learn about leadership from this?
Okay, let me get the right window pulled up.
No problem. I know I myself have so many windows open oftentimes that it's.
Okay, now I think I'm
list.
ready. I think this will work.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah. All right. Is it sharing the right thing?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I don't recognize I'm sure it is.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the Shirtless Dancing Guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Great. Thank you for sharing your screen. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I'll get
That
mine
was
back
pretty
onto the
crazy.
PowerPoint here. So what did folks think of that? What's that? Okay, you can see my screen again, I hope. Oh, might be frozen. Oh.
Yep, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay,
I just had to get back. Yeah.
Good. What did folks think of that? Has anyone seen that before?
No, I hadn't seen it before. I thought they were all Peace Corps volunteers, but
Now that's a thought. That could be very true. Actually, it's funny because my coworker in my boss in the Global Reentry Program, Dan Baker, he was the PTO, the DPT, Director of Projects and Training in in a couple countries. And when he was there, he used to always show his volunteers this, because it was that example of how you can be a leader. I mean, like, I'm not recommending that everyone go out and, dance, shirtless in their, whatever, but how it starts. And somebody, you're not afraid to get out there, do something, take some, steps, and people then, you have that integral role of the first person following, and then the second, and then it builds, and look how much it built in 3 minutes. Like, that was pretty impressive how everyone was up and dancing anyway. Right. So I like that. So let's go ahead and we'll, yeah, something to emulate. That's right. All right, that's great. So let's define a little more of an informal leader, right? Let's just talk about that for a little bit. So, as we said, leaders, formal leaders have that title or that, right, that authority, title of authority, whatever. But an informal leader doesn't have that, but they have incredible influence, and which is, really important and can be just absolutely crucial in getting things done in organizations, in, boards, in, groups that you volunteer with, everything, right? And everyone knows who they are, right? And people look up to them, right? They want to, they want to get close to them, right? They want to, learn from them oftentimes, right? And people listen to what they say. So you have a lot of people who are probably talking and speaking and saying things, and probably a lot of different thoughts or ideas. But who do people listen to? Who do they gravitate to? That's typically the informal leader, right? So, so that can be so helpful, right? In especially when there's, conflict that comes up, or difficulties, challenges, right? It can, that informal leader is really setting the stage, setting the tone for how things will be handled, and, working together as a strong team, right? And then, the last one here is really, talking about, how the good informal leader can transform the culture, and experience. And that's true. But what about the opposite? Because let's face it, how many of you have had a bad leader experience where a formal leader, or, leader in general has not been a good leader? And, how many of you have had that? Anyone in the chat box? And if they haven't, what was it that made them a bad leader? What was it that you didn't like, that the other team didn't like? What was the impact? That kind of thing. Just jot a couple things if you can into the chat box, or feel free again to unmute and just share it verbally. I'm fine with that as well with this group. Yep, Erica, the incredible negativity and divisiveness. Absolutely, right? Somebody who's really negative and divisive is not going to be able to lead a diverse team to where they need to go. I mean, a team that represents different departments, different, whatever it is, right? Different initiatives, bringing them together and moving forward is so important. So that's great. Ellen says, I had a leader who was very competitive, with her own team. And that's exactly the opposite, right? We were talking about how the leader, it's not you and your success, it's the team's success. And through that, it is your success. And some people just can't take that they can't take themselves out of that competitive, like needing to be the person who is, whatever, thinks of the ideas. And that's really hard. Yeah. Ginny says a bad leader lets several informal leaders, lets several informal leaders take over goals. Okay. So it was, hold on, I'm just making this bigger. Sorry. So I can read the whole thing. And accomplishments of her team, and then repackage them as her own in front of the board. Oh gosh, Eva, that's awful. Taking ideas and accomplishments from the team and then repackaging them as their own in front of the board. That is horrible, because I hope she was not in that leadership position for very long, but unfortunately, sometimes they stay far too long because of some connection or some kind of thing that makes it, difficult to, oust them from that leadership role. Jeannie, I started to read yours and my screen, got frozen. A bad leader lets several informal leaders take over goals and meetings. So there essentially was no leader. Okay, so that sounds like not only the formal leader, like just stepping back and letting chaos rule, but the informal leaders that took over were not ones that really were able to keep the goals on track and fill in the absence, but rather it just was more flighty. There wasn't any right guiding or whatever. And that's hard too. Absolutely. I mean, I think most people can think of, a bad leadership, experience. And that is really, really true. But, a couple of things on here, the last one here, the complainer or the backstabber. I mean, that is sometimes the worst, right? The one who will say everything nice. Oh, you're great. You're doing a great job. And then they backstab you, to either senior management or to other people. And I mean, that's not cool, obviously. So, okay. So obviously you want to be the kind of leader that is, formal and informal, who's going to have those positive traits that we've talked about, right? So I have a couple slides here that just show, and this is from Career Trend. And I liked how they did the pros and cons, right? It's not the prettiest slide, but it gets the job done. So informal leadership, right? The pros of it is, it is official. So there's somebody that, the buck stops here, right? There is somebody who's responsible for doing that. It's part of their job description, right? To, if necessary, exercise, authority and control. Hopefully they don't need to do that a lot, but if somebody's very out of check and just, needs it, you need to have somebody who, the pros of that can be that you have that authority if and when needed, right? So, so the group members are also oftentimes more likely to respect and follow the commands. That can be true in work environments where like their supervisor is that leader person, and they of course want to and need to, they feel they need to follow that, so that they'll follow them maybe more because they are the quote unquote official leader. Sometimes people in a group, you have these informal leaders that come up, and that's great, but sometimes people are like, well, they're not the boss. Why are we, and so that can be challenging. Could make use of informal leaders to maximize support of the group. The pros of formal leadership, a good formal leader will successfully utilize informal leaders and recognize and kind of, give them some of that, a responsibility or that, leadership, right, role to be able to really go forward and do these great things. So, and it's in society, it's true. I mean, more commonly in society when the leadership roles like president, CEO, teacher, faculty, whatever, that's that, role that kind of commands respect in the very traditional view of roles and such, right? And then oftentimes, not always though, I would say on this one, formal leaders are often more experienced to lead a group of people. They have more formal experience. But again, you can cultivate through the informal, and that can make you more competitive for leadership ones eventually as well. So on the flip side, the cons, what's the disadvantage of formal leadership? You have it creates the impression that leaders employees are being controlled instead of being part of the decision making process, when it's the formal leadership, right? That's just true. And then group members may not associate with the leader, making it difficult to achieve goals efficiently. They can be perceived as intimidating and not fully honest with the group regarding the group interests, right? I mean, that's some of the risks of it, right? Whereas with informal leadership, right, you have some of the pros and cons. They're generally informal leaders are leaders because of how they are, who they are, what they are, how they act, right? How they treat other people with respect. So they're usually very charismatic and strong, can have strong interpersonal skills generally, right? So they're good at communicating. I mean, all of those kinds of things. Groups can be drawn toward the informal as they also they're a part of the group, and so it's a little easier sometimes to be oh yeah, they're part of the group. They're not this external person that's breathing down our neck or whatever. Just a couple other things here. I mean, you can read this as well, of course, but they tend to be more emotionally intelligent, right? And inspire different respect, and all of that can really help the team to enable their ability to really feel like they're progressing and such. So and then the cons, of course, there are some cons, even though I think informal leaders are great, but the cons are sometimes the group can instead choose somebody on more, they can choose somebody on more superficial reasons, right? So instead of the important qualities that are required to lead, the person who's the best communicator, the person who's very open, receptive, listens more, those kinds of things, right? Sometimes they'll choose them on some different thing, maybe not that it's like a popularity contest sometimes, right? Can come into being. So and then they're unable to exercise authority, right, to get a project done if they don't have that authority, that like entitled, that title to say, I have the power to do this. They're an informal, right? So that can be a challenge sometimes as well. And then they sometimes the group doesn't always agree on one formal informal leaders, so there can be sometimes more internal conflict. And I realize here we are on just about the last slide here. I realize that we are already slightly after the hour with the late start due to the internet connection issues. But in this slide here, enhancing your informal leadership. This is just some of, I liked this article that was, part of, it's based on this article in LinkedIn. LinkedIn has some really good articles, right? And some really good writers for them that they do, different kinds of trainings and stuff. But, don't over control or micromanage. Like that's a recipe for disaster, right? Nobody wants to be micromanaged, right? You want somebody that you can go to if you have questions, but you don't necessarily want to be looked over at every step of the way. That can be a huge, yuck, right? So also understanding the informal setup and the power and lack thereof that is in this type of leadership and this informal style, right? So relationship building is key, really focus time on that so that you can, hopefully gain the trust and all of that, and the feeling that people see you as a team member, right? You are a part of this team and the solution. So coalition building goes with it, right? Help and be helped. I think that's a really important one. Not just having them help you, move forward or whatever, but help them and then allow them to help you with their strengths. Somebody who has certain strengths, really rely on them and put some things on them to be able to allow them to, feel acknowledged and such. And then I just love the saying, I don't know who said it at first, the seek to understand, then be understood, or seek to understand, not be understood, right? Really, listening and hearing what they're saying and understanding what they're coming from instead of trying to make them understand your point, right? And then when you're leading by example, you can, do more, talk less, right? You don't need to talk that much. And really show, as we've already kind of talked about, show the successes as the team success, not taking credit for it as somebody's awful leader did to the board. That would not be good. Being empathetic, you understand you're there to listen, you're there to, you You understand that they are people as well as employees, right? So being part of the solution and not the problem. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, there can be things that you discover that aren't going to, work, right? But don't go like, this isn't going to work and just, shoot it down. Be like, looks like the challenges with this are this. How can we think through, let's think about the solution. How can we get around that and work toward the resolution of this problem, rather than being that negative, nearly, this didn't work, we have to do something else, and right? Encourage people. We've already talked about that. Anything that has been left out here on this slide or the other, is there anything else you would add to that on the best ways to enhance your informal leadership and your influence, in other words, that you might want to share? Anyways, there's lots of ways to, right? You can, get involved with, it's not just in the work environment, right? You might get involved with, some volunteer thing. You all are pro volunteers, being, return Peace Corps volunteers, right? So you might, maybe volunteer at an organization, at a food bank, at a whatever it is. And if there are, you're there, you're consistent, you're, knowledge, people start to look at you as more that leader, and you can really hone those skills, which can then be really effectively shared in your interviews for your jobs. For example, if somebody is asking, and like if they're asking, tell us about a time that you've led, or whatever, a process, you could certainly come out with, when I was working in I was one of the team members, and I became really one of the informal leaders in steering this along. And that happened because I or, respected the team and saw them as, whatever. And you could certainly use some of these ways that you've, gotten your leadership skills better too. So that brings us to the end. So I guess my last question would be, are there any questions that have not yet been answered, or any questions that you have not asked that you want to ask? I can be here for a few more minutes. I have a 2:30, but I can be here for a few more minutes. If anyone has questions that haven't come up, or you want to ask on a one-on-one basis, and you can certainly unmute yourselves too, and just have a chat. So let me know if there are. All right. So I don't see any questions coming in, and that's just fine. If you do have questions, always know that you can reach out to me at jodi@rpcv.org. That's the easy one, or jodi@peacecorpsconnect.org. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Just FYI, we do have a great recording coming up. I believe it's next Friday, and it's on taming the inbox. And I have actually a couple of my colleagues who are way better at this than I am, right? I definitely want to learn from this system, but they're going to be doing that for our 1 o'clock professional development session. So it should be a really good one, talking about the ways to, like, weed through your inbox, keep yourself organized online, which I think all of us can benefit from, and it can help us be more effective, efficient, and all of that. So hopefully you'll be able to tune in maybe for that. That's on the 21st of May. So thanks so much, everyone, and make it a great day. And we'll hope to see you sometime soon. Bye-bye.